Hola, 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 hola. Hola, hola.
Hola Greta, ¿me estás oyendo? Hola, ¿me ves? Oh, sorry, Greta, you see me? You see me, you hear me? Greta? Greta in the house? Greta, I don't know if you see me. ¿Tú estás conectado, Diego? ¿Tú estás live? Ok. Ok, todavía no me ven, ¿eh? Espérate. Sí, espérate, todavía. Me están. Sí, parece que. ¿Me ve? You see me? You hear me, Greta? Ay, qué bueno. Sí.
Sí.
Greta! We're placing the slide, Greta. Bye, thank you.
¿Para qué hemos venido a las 8 de la mañana?
Hola, 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 sí, 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 hola, hola, sí, sí, hola, 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 sí, sí, hola, hola, sí, hola, 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 sí, sí, hola, 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 sí, sí, hola, 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 sí, hola, hola, sí, sí, hola, 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 sí, sí, sí,
Buenos días, probando con cabina de traducción. Probando el piso. Sí, ellos pueden ver la presentación. ¿En qué canal estamos? ¿Español? ¿Inglés? ¿Qué tal? Buenos días, buenos días. Hola, hola. Sí. Español, canal español, que es el 1. Si yo hablo en inglés, estoy hablando en inglés, inglés, y ellos tendrían que cambiar al canal español. Hola, inglés. Y tendríamos que cambiar acá en inglés. A ver, estoy hablando en español, traducción debería hablar en inglés. Perfecto. Muchas gracias.
Hola, sí. Sí. Fue. Hola, hola, hola. Sí, sí. ¿Llega a las cámaras? Sí.
es el fondo, ahí te envié uno con fondo solo. Sí, y ahí lo cuadras.
Siempre cuando se alarga, se agranda los proporcionales.
Sí. Y. Hola, sí. Sí.
Ahí he puesto dos, pero entonces son, o sea, ahí están cada nombre con dos variantes. A ver, checa, porque uno, por si acaso hicieron con el logo con transparente, no sé, y el otro sin, y el otro solamente nombre.
Mike, está llegando todo, ¿no? Está llegando la pantalla, está llegando la traducción, listo, ¿no? Más bien hay que indicar desde el momento que antes de comience, al menos a los que van a poner más, hablar más, indicarles que siempre tienen que presionar el micro para poder hablar y se va a encender en rojo.
Ah, ok, ok.
O sea, porque
Sí, así como estaba probando ayer,
ajá,
sí.
algunos se ponen a hablar y no se les escucha, piensa que saca el control. Ellos tienen el control total.
Vale, si dejamos el micro abierto, probablemente no la fiesta, así que mejor que presione.
Claro, mejor que y siempre, como te digo, ¿no? Siempre van a estar dos micros dentro de la O. Pueden hablar dos en simultáneo y fuera de la U pueden hablar dos en simultáneo.
Pero mejor uno, pero si no, pues, se mantenga.
Ahí hay dos.
¿Cuántos nombres son? ¿Cuántos carpetas hay? 6, creo, ¿no? It's very nice to have you all here. Just some reminders, with this session and the two following ones would be live streamed. And then we have a coffee break just in the room outside of here. And after the coffee break, the meeting will be confidential just for in-person invitees here in the room. If you want to check any of our reports that are going to be mentioned during the meeting, you have a QR code here where you can download our reports and also the draft revision to the principles. And that's basically it. It's a great honor now to invite Dr. Carmine De Nooijer, our Director for Financial Enterprise Affairs at the OECD, to give his opening remarks. Yeah, Carmine.
Okay, so thank you, Caio. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning, Chair Peschiera, also chairs and commissioners of securities regulators, representative of the markets, actually representative colleagues also coming from the embassies of some OECD countries here in the room, so distinguished guests. So it's a great pleasure to be here in. For me, it's the first time in the beautiful city of Lima that I also had the chance a bit to know with the help of Jose Manuel. And for this OECD Latin American Roundtable on Corporate Governance. So let me thank, I would say institutionally, but also personally, Superintendent Jose Manuel Peschiera for hosting this meeting of the Roundtable. And actually for your active participation in the OECD work on corporate governance in the last few years. Your strong support, Jose Manuel, for the organization of this meeting and the professionalism of your team has been very much appreciated by us. And I hope you will see also in the next day and tomorrow. So now that Peru, as you all know, is in the accession process to become a full member of the OECD, we will have even more opportunities to meet and to help Peru efforts to build a stronger corporate sector and capital markets, realizing the full potential. Now, currently, market cap of listed companies is around, 30% of Peru GDP, which is, not an important number. There can be improvements. As a reference, just because we are here, but in Brazil, market cap is around 50% of GDP. So more widespread use of public capital markets would represent an important advancement for Peru corporate sector, but also, for the participation, the strengthening of the market participation of citizens. We hope that reforms made during the accession process of the OECD will make public markets in the country more attractive to companies. Peru has the highest ownership concentration among the major Latin American markets, is a factor, with the largest shareholder holding on average more than 70% of the equity in the listed companies. And an internationally recognized effective corporate governance framework could help Peru to attract more foreign investors, increasing the liquidity and sources for funding for companies listed locally. To this end, we are very much looking forward to an even stronger cooperation with Peru, and the meeting today and tomorrow will be an opportunity for the Peruvian stakeholders, and all of you are here, to get to know the work of the OECD better, and of course for us to learn more about your recent progress and the challenges you are facing. We're also very happy to have more than 90 participants who have come from other countries in Latin America and outside the region, including the United States, Spain, and Israel. The OECD Latin American Roundtable on Corporate Governance was first established in 2000, and it has become the main forum for policy dialogue on corporate governance and capital market development. Since then, since 2000, a lot have happened in the world of corporate governance and capital markets. And in particular, in 2015, actually, G20 leaders endorsed the OECD principles of corporate governance so as a G20 instrument, increasing their visibility globally and also the widespread use. Actually, in Latin America, jurisdictions have also strengthened the corporate governance practices in line with the G20 OECD principles, including with better disclosure on related party transactions and financial reporting in accordance with international accounting standards. We are now entering a new phase. Climate change has become a central part of the agenda of most policymakers, investors, and companies. And we see the urgency of this. In some regions, also other sustainability matters such as customer privacy, biodiversity, and human rights are also of key importance to the corporate sector and investors. This requires a fundamental reflection on our current corporate governance rules and practices. As we will see during our discussions, corporate governance challenges cannot be considered in isolation. These challenges transcend borders, they span across value chains, and they require a collective response from all of us, the private sector, the public sector, international organizations like the OECD, civil society, and others. That is why this roundtable is so important. We hope the discussion will help us learn from each other's experiences, as I mentioned before, as we update the G20 OECD principles. And as many of you consider whether and how to update your own frameworks and market practices. In the next session, I will present progress made in reviewing the G20 OECD principles of corporate governance, but then we will deep dive into our recent research on climate change and corporate governance, as well as the proposed addition of a new chapter, Chapter 6, on sustainability and resilience in the revised principles. In today's other sessions, we will hear from experienced practitioners and leading experts on some key priority areas for the review of the principles. Now, these priority areas include the role of institutional investors, company groups, very important, new digital technologies, the rights of debt holders, an interesting addition, and gender diversity, a structural issue. The OECD team will take detailed notes of the discussion today and engage with you so that we can report back to the OECD Corporate Governance Committee in its next meeting, which will be in March. Your feedback on the draft revisions of the principle today, but actually we had already feedback during the open consultation process from many of you also sitting in this room, will be extremely useful for us. Tomorrow we will discuss how corporate governance frameworks in Latin America could be updated to ensure the effective management and disclosure of environmental and social risks and opportunities. Ensuring a just and inclusive transition to net zero emissions is one of the defining issues of our time. And the private sector has a key role to play in this transition. We look forward to hearing your views on how companies can meet this challenge while ensuring they create long-term value. In addition to our work on corporate governance at the OECD, we are also working on issues of responsible business conduct to maximize business contribution to sustainable development and minimizing the adverse impacts business operations, relationships, and supply chains may have. The OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises and related due diligence guidance provide a global rulebook for responsible business. The OECD supports this agenda in Latin America since 2019 through the RBC LAC project. And we are actually in the process, we will have the RBC Ministerial in February, where many ministers from your countries will attend. And also, again, we're in the process of updating the guidelines, and so it's important also your full engagement on that. So finally, to conclude, I would like again to warmly thank José Manuel Pesquera and Peru SMB once again for the support of the roundtable. And thank you also to IDB Invest, represented by Luis Gabriel de Azevedo today. Where is he? There? Yeah, okay, we had a nice meeting this morning, really for your generous financial contribution to this year's roundtable. We hope to maintain this cooperation going forward and join efforts with IDB Invest to achieve our common goal of making Latin American corporate sector more sustainable and dynamic. And this will help the countries to be more sustainable and dynamic. So I'm looking forward to fruitful discussion in the following session. So with that, I hand the floor over to Jose Manuel for your opening remarks. Thank you again. Thank you to all of you.
Caro Carmine, benvenuto a Lima e grazie per averti fatto il tempo per starci qui con noi. And now we go to English. And this will be actually the last time I will speak in English in this roundtable. Hi, Rani. As I'm more comfortable in Spanish. It is with great satisfaction that I warmly welcome you to this 2022 OECD Latin American Roundtable on Corporate Governance meeting. It is an honor for our country and for the Superintendents of the Securities Market of Peru to host this conference, which is recognized as the most important regional corporate governance event. I must tell you that this roundtable was scheduled to take place in 2020, in which the SMV celebrated its 50th anniversary. However, the sanitary conditions generated by the pandemic led to its successive postponement. I would like to thank again Carmine Di Noia, Serdar Celik, Caio de Oliveira, and their team, with whom we have been coordinating during this year. Everything necessary to carry out this important meeting, despite the difficulties and uncertainties that COVID-19 pandemic brought, and which has put our capacities for organizing, coordinating, and searching for efficient solutions to the test. I also thank all those who are participating in this session the next 2 days, among which we have representatives of regulators, stock exchanges, and other policymakers from various countries in the region, as well as important players in the private sector and experts that undoubtedly guarantee discussions and analysis of the highest level. I also want to thank Ronnie Talmore. Ronnie is Israel's delegate to the Corporate Governance Committee, for joining us and sharing the important advances that her country has made in terms of corporate governance. Thank you, Ronnie, for being here. It's a long, long trip from Israel to Peru. Thank you for that. The roundtable provides us with the opportunity to take stock and help set the agenda for future regional improvements in corporate governance, even more so in the ongoing revision process of the G20 OECD Principles of Corporate Governance. Issues related to sustainability in the business sector, the role of institutional investors, groups of companies, digitalization, the rights of bondholders, and diversity on boards of directors and in senior management are being deeply analyzed by the committee and will guide the regulators and policymakers' agendas in the years to come. We are witnesses of societies that are facing the consequences of an unprecedented global health and economic crisis that is testing the resilience of all countries in the world. Its effects on economic activity have not been yet fully quantified, as it is an ongoing crisis. And governments and the private sector are required to make effective decisions in the shortest possible time with a turmoil and changing environment, within which the capital markets, their various participants, and in general the business community are no strangers. In this context of extreme and unusual uncertainty, regulators, supervisors, policymakers, the private sector, and in general, all those involved in the financial markets have had to adopt extraordinary measures that seek to provide immediate responses to what the market and the environment demand, managing the present without losing sight of the future's vision, and in which aspects related to good corporate governance and the incorporation of best practices in the culture of companies are, by all means, key aspects for the future of markets in which, in many ways, we have been reflected in the drafts of the G20 OECD Principles of Corporate Governance under review. In this sense, I would like to emphasize that the SMB recognizes the importance of transparency and the adoption of good corporate practices as an essential mechanism for investors' protection and, therefore, for the development and strengthening of the capital markets. Our active participation and full support for the various initiatives that have been taking place within the OECD Corporate Governance Committee has enabled us to present our points of view and learn firsthand about the main standards in terms of good business practices. In terms of corporate governance practices and disclosure, it's worth highlighting the significant achievement reached with the publication in 2013 of the Code of Good Corporate Governance for Peruvian companies, which took into account the progress made on this area by organizations such as the OECD and CAF at that moment, and the subsequent approval of the report on its compliance in 2014. Last August, the report has been updated based on the proposal presented by the private sector through the ESG Working Group of the Peruvian Capital Markets Advisory Council. The report provides valuable information that is published in an aggregated manner on the SMV's website. The publications allows the SMV and the public to know how the companies comply or not with the principles of good governance established in the code, as well as making comparisons among them. Along the same lines, in December 2015, the SMB approved the Corporate Sustainability Report. This report was updated in February 2020 in accordance with current trends in social and environmental matters, and which also took into account the improvement proposal presented by the ESG Working Group of the Peruvian Capital Markets Advisory Council. The proposals made to update both reports demonstrate the importance and need for coordinated work and common goals between the public and private sectors. The initiatives implemented by the SMV are important steps towards promoting the adoption of best corporate practices by issuers, being aware that their compliance has a positive impact on the market. This highlights the importance for regulators to permanently deploy efforts so these good practices are extended and adopted by the majority of companies participating in the public securities market, taking necessarily into account the particularities of each market. I am convinced, thanks to the quality of the speakers, panelists, moderators, and all participants in the roundtable, we will be able to deepen and draw important lessons on the progress of the capital markets and the corporate governance framework in the region, and certainly will contribute to design better policies that strengthen corporate governance in our countries, which should be correlated with the development and transparency of our markets. Finally, I would like to underline my deep gratitude to the OECD, Carmine Di Noia, and the entire team of the Secretariat of the Corporate Governance Committee for their trust and support, as well as to all the participants in this meeting for sharing their knowledge and points of view. Hoping you will have a pleasant stay in Lima and that your expectations will be fulfilled. Bienvenidos todos a Lima. Un fuerte abrazo para todos porque no he podido saludar a todos ustedes y estoy seguro que estas 2 jornadas van a ser inmejorables. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, José Manuel. We are going to move now to the first session where Carmine will give an overview of the revision of the principles of corporate governance. And I would just like to remind you that in the first session, in the next session, the second one, you will not yet have the chance to make questions to the panelists or to make comments, but then we have a coffee break, and after the coffee break, you will have the opportunity to make questions to Carmine and to all other lead discussants in the second session. So please take note of your questions and save it for the session after the coffee break. So Carmine, please, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Caio. Muchas gracias to José Manuel for your nice word. And the team has been working a lot. I mean, you have Cesar, Caio, and Adriana here, but also all the colleagues. And again, this is the process of the review of the principles is a long one, but always say that reward is proportional to the effort. So the idea here is to inform you about. Many of you are already well aware, but I think it's good to know about the process we've made in updating the G20 OECD principles of corporate governance. Now and many of you have been involved also, I would say, in the previous revisions, and even some of you even from the beginning. But obviously we have had, since the first edition, rapid changes and major challenges in recent years, so including growing impacts and concerns surrounding climate change, and then COVID-19 pandemic, rapid growth of digitalization, unfortunately. Important geopolitical conflicts, which together with other impacts are creating new uncertainties and vulnerabilities. Now, these developments obviously have huge impacts on the private sector, so putting corporations' adaptability and resilience to the test and raising questions as to whether current frameworks for corporate governance remain fit for purpose. So in this, basically, in this context, OECD and the Corporate Governance Committee have decided to undertake a comprehensive review of the G20 OECD principles. Now, the review, started in November 21, actually following OECD ministers and G20 leaders' support for the review, after the G20 meeting in Italy was leading the G20 at that time, and our aim basically is to complete it by early 2023, March meeting of the committee, and then a possible approval at the ministerial, the OECD, and endorsement by G20. Just to notice that G20 in Bali was able to issue a communique, actually, which was the first time after the war. And on the many more things, there was also the endorsement, and some of you also could be interested in that, of the new G20 OECD high-level principles on financial consumer protection, which are very relevant for policymakers, finance ministers, but also for securities regulators. Now, these reviews of the OECD corporate governance principles is managed by the OECD Corporate Governance Committee, in which all OECD G20, so including the G20 non-OECD members, and FSB members participate. And I would like to focus on 3 aspects in the presentation. So first, and we will see in a while, we have already the slide on the G20 principles, the structure. And second, how the principle contribute to shared strategic priorities of the OECD and G20. And finally, on the progress so far on the review of the principles. Now, as you can see, I mean, this is our Bible, so the small booklet. Now, the principles are really the global standard in corporate governance, in the area of corporate governance all over the world. They were issued as an OECD instrument in 1999. They were endorsed after also a revision by G20 leaders in 2015 under the Turkish G20 presidency. And obviously this significantly increased the outreach, the importance and influence. Now, the principles, I mean, this is not a corporate governance code, okay? Because this is not directly, issued for companies, for listed companies. The role of the principles is to help policymakers to evaluate and improve the legal, regulatory, and institutional framework for corporate governance. And so, as you can see in this slide, they have these 6 pillars. So ensuring the basis for an effective corporate governance framework is very important, in particular principle 1. So the institutional frameworks actually tackling also the topic of, I would say, even independence and including financial independence of regulators, the mix of, regulation, self-regulation, laws, rules, practices, codes, comply or explain binding regulation. So this is very important, the role of stock exchanges, by the way, we were discussing yesterday night. The rights and equitable treatment of shareholders and key ownership function, okay, very important, and also with, we will see with the addiction. The role, very important, of institutional investors, stock markets, and other intermediaries. All other intermediaries in broad sense, we discuss also the role of proxy advisors, rating agencies, but also ESG ratings in the new edition, in the modification. The role of stakeholders in corporate governance, okay, we do not enter the important structural debate of the purpose of corporation, but I think we made a significant and important discussion there. It was already there, the long-term interests of the company, more and more shareholder and stakeholder interests, they overlap. Disclosure and transparency, and the responsibility of the board. So this was the traditional structure of the principles. They were endorsed by the FSB. Actually, this is one of the key standards for sound financial systems. And by the World Bank as the benchmark for actually the corporate governance assessment. So 53 jurisdictions have adhered to the principles, so including all G20 and FSB members. Now, next slide, Caio, please. Okay, this is important. I mean, this may be simple, but we always say that corporate governance is not an end in itself. If it will be an end in itself, would be, we end up with check the box and pretending, that we have something we don't have. But we really think that the priorities of the principles, so the objectives, and I want to elaborate on this, is really first, so to promote really access to finance, innovation, and entrepreneurship, as you see. To provide a framework to protect investors, okay, and so the idea again is to have to discuss about supply and demand, okay, and we need both sides to have efficient and functioning financial markets, but also providing access to investors, to citizen. I'm always talking about financial democracy. It's important, direct and indirect access. But then to support corporate sector sustainability and resilience, which then lead actually to sustainability and resilience, of the economy. Okay, so this is the only way really to create, jobs and growth. Next slide, please, Caio. So the first objective, this is, important. Some of you know already very well this data and this figure. So the principles wants to provide a corporate governance framework that gives market participants the tools and incentives to ensure that companies can access finance from capital markets. Access finance, capital markets in a broad sense, not only equity. Okay. So capital markets play an essential role in mobilizing savings. So you see supply and demand to both finance large established companies, but also new and innovative firms. And in many, many countries all over the world, these are the backbone of the economy, of the future economy. SMEs, rather than MEs. So during the financial and COVID-19 crisis, equity markets provided companies actually with substantial amount of much needed capital. Actually, if you see in 2020, so if you see on the left, and 2021. So non-financial companies raised, I mean, record amounts, totaling almost $2 trillion in new capital for 2 years, as shown there on the left. You know, so even in moments of very important difficulty, in a sense, markets were open and provided also funding. Now, capital markets have undergone important changes in recent years, and in most advanced countries, the number of listed companies have declined. We always use this key number. From 2005 to 2020, 30,000 listed companies, 30,000 companies delisted from the markets, which is basically 75% of the companies who are on public markets today. The exception actually is in Asia, which now hosts half of all listed companies in the world, and half of the most dynamic markets for IPO, so both in terms of stock and flows. Next slide, can you please? So, capital market, corporate governance, first objective. Second objective, providing a framework to protect investors. Now, the principal focus on publicly traded companies, let's say listed companies, but we know that everywhere the most dynamic markets are these you call it multilateral trading facilities, you call growth markets, so these markets for SMEs. So to all of them. And provides a framework to foster dynamic markets and investment while protecting investors. If you don't have that, you don't have anyone's buying these securities. And so, as I mentioned, we have now more or less the order of magnitude is 40,000 listed companies today. So with a combined market value of over $105 trillion. So public markets are the largest asset class available to households to participate in corporate wealth creation. And so, who are the owners of companies? Okay, then, which we can discuss in each, state, in some states, and we are similar in that. My country of origin, where maybe the ownership structure is concentrated in families or in some cases in the state. But actually, who are the largest shareholders in the stock market? Institutional investors. And they invest a large share of their portfolio in foreign markets, which is good. It's important. It's important to have, again, flows of capital. It means that the markets are open and the companies are interested and attractive. This makes sound corporate governance policies, so if you want that, essential to protect investors across borders. Next slide. And then, the third objective, so supporting corporate sector sustainability and resilience. And the principles have a big, important role to play. Now, our research shows there are important recent trends in these areas. For example, we estimate that climate change is a significant financially material risk for listed companies, which represents 2/3 of the global market cap. So it's an important issue. And you see that. And in addition, the corporate sector indebtedness on the right has increased significantly. Actually doubling what was 15 years ago in 2005. So a good corporate governance framework improves corporation access to market-based financing, and in particular public equity, but not only. So better access to equity means stronger corporate balance sheets, and this enables new and innovative businesses to support also the green and digital transition, which are both essential for a long-term resilience. Now, the next slide shows, the 10 priority areas for the review, which were identified by the Corporate Governance Committee. These priorities support a number of OECD and G20 priorities, including promoting a resilient post-COVID recovery, and also there was an interesting report published in summer 2021 in July, together with the fact book. I think that you know the OECD fact book on corporate governance, published every 2 years. So next year will be the new edition. But okay, so a lot of priorities, including managing the post-COVID recovery, and so the report important post-COVID was there, managing climate transition, support the digital transformation. And I would like maybe in the few minutes remaining to outline some of the main revisions being considered to address these priorities. And so we go to the next slide. And by the way, I just invite you, for those who doesn't know our page, our web page of corporate governance, of corporate governance division, to go there, because when we published the principle for consultation, we also published 7, if I'm not wrong, 7 important papers which basically were covering across all the areas for revision with a lot of important, I think, and good data, coming also with the dialogue with all of you. Now, so first, the draft revision propose important changes to the introductory framework of the principles. And in particular, even if I would say that in some cases it would be better if they were imposed, this would facilitate in some countries, some changes. But, so maybe it's a lapsus for an Italian person. But so now the biggest overall change proposed in the revision actually is the new chapter, which had a lot of discussion in the committee and also with members on sustainability and resilience, chapter 6, the new chapter 6. And this chapter brings together guidance on corporate governance issues from a cross-cutting perspective. And it addresses corporate disclosures, shareholder, boards, and stakeholders. And this is an important addition and specification, I would say. Actually, the draft revision promotes the disclosure of financial and non-financial information, and the use of internationally accepted standards. Many of you are familiar with the discussion, ISSB, Building Block Approach, IOSCO. And these why it's important to have global standards, because we want financial markets. This is in the interest of all countries, open, and so you need comparability. And this is the only way, okay. Now, the draft revision also seeks to provide guidance on the concept of materiality. We could open other 2 roundtables discussing even the one, but then this is important. In addition, also, this tries to promote more dialogue between directors, key executives, shareholders, okay, these are the traditional issues, and stakeholders, and also the role of boards taking into account stakeholders. So on all these matters. So the revision also highlights the importance for the board of long-term thinking, which may be supported, for instance, by the adoption of a business judgment rule, or actually similar safe harbor, because according to, civil law, common law countries, we have different situations. Let's go to the next. Okay. Also, an important, I think, part of the revision is smaller in terms of quantity, but important in terms of impact and quality, is the discussion and the addition on some specification of company groups. We all know that basically companies on the public market, they are part of a group, they have a lot of control companies and so on. Now, the aim is to promote a clear regulatory framework of company group. Many of you are familiar also with the parallel work, an important work that G20 OECD has done in terms of for the taxation. And so, it's for transparency purposes. But so here, the topic is to try to develop definition and criteria for the oversight of group structures. Now, so the principles aim also to ensure the rights of minority shareholders so that they are protected by increasing disclosure of capital structures, group structures, which is not so obvious, especially when you have cross-border groups. Maybe not only in geographical areas, but all over the world, and with direct and indirect, with many, many layers and levels of below and above the listed company. And by emphasizing that the board's responsibilities are related actually to the company and all of its shareholders, and not only or not necessarily to the group. Now, the revisions also seek to improve risk management, and by ensuring the disclosure on large and complex risks related, again, to company groups overall, and to improve disclosure of related party transaction. As Emmanuel was mentioning, this has been an important part of the work of the OECD and the Corporate Governance Committee also in the past years. I see also Leonardo there, but we have worked a lot with also in South America on this issue, thanks to the support of important countries. So important to better identify who are the related parties in complex group structures and addressing potential conflict of interest. And in addition, they also address the role here in the bottom of the slide of the important role of institutional investors and what we now currently call stewardship. So including also the growing use of stewardship codes, which has been now a common habit everywhere, as a tool to support what? Shareholder engagement. But so as well as in this engagement to address the increasing use of ESG indices, data and ratings by institutional investors, but also the rise as in indirect engagement tools for institutional investors. Next. Another important topic you see here, which is, I would say, quite obvious, and even with the pandemic, even increased the importance, is the growing use of digital technologies and the related opportunities and risks. And the need to consider these evolutions both in supervisory practices and as well as regulatory frameworks. Now, in addition to the board responsibilities of digital security risks in terms of disclosure and risk management, new recommendations also underline the importance of a technology-neutral approach that basically does not impair innovation, while also promoting emerging good practices with respect to the conduct of virtual and hybrid shareholder meetings, which is an important issue. Let's see what will be also the evolution around of the pandemic. So concerning board responsibilities and duties, revisions include the strength and recommendation on diversity in all senses, but also obviously gender is there, and the growing use of board committees. There is also a new emphasis on risk management, including crisis management, and a key new element of the principles guidance on executive remuneration so addresses the disclosure of sustainability indicators used in determining executive pay. And finally, the principles, this is very important, I think the last point, propose a new standalone recommendation to address the increasing importance of corporate debt and bondholders in markets, the rights and their impacts on corporate governance frameworks. And the revision also addresses the importance of disclosure of material information on debt contracts, and we have seen the evolution of these in terms of covenants and when there are important issues that may then affect really the value and I would say the life of the company. So from a corporate governance point of view, this is essential. So including the risk of non-compliance with covenants. Next slide, and then I'm about to conclude. Now, this slide shows basically the summary timeline of the review, which I already mentioned. This is more in detail. So we had a public consultation recently, which were also discussed in the committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, where also Jose Manuel, many of you participated. And in parallel with the public consultation, we're having, like also today, consultation with other members. We're having events, but also we're having internal consultations. So why? I mentioned the M&E guidelines before, we have financial market, but so we are working also across the house, discussing also with a lot of colleagues. Our aim, so as I said, is you see the detailed data, but also for 2023, the forecast. And as I said, if you go on our website, you will find a full update, but also the other material which is relevant, and we are strongly advised, in case you don't know, to have a look at. And so with that overview, just finished. Thank you for your attention, and I hand the floor to Caio de Oliveira for our second session on sustainability and resilience in the corporate sector. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carmine. Now we're moving to the session, as just mentioned, about sustainability in the corporate sector. And for that one, I'd like to hand the floor to Santiago Charre, who is the Managing Director of Cefeidos Group in Argentina. So, Santiago, the floor is yours.
Hola, buenos días. Esta segunda sesión también va a ser stream online, así que voy a tratar de moderar la sesión en inglés. So I'm switching to English now. So it's a pleasure to be with all of you here once again, after a few years of not seeing each other in person. I think that I'm very grateful to be moderating this session because having the chance to discuss this new Chapter 6 of the principles, which is, I think, will be key for the future of the principles. It's an honor. I hope that this is an opportunity to discuss sustainability and the role of the board, not only in considering sustainability as risks or as the role of the board of setting goals that sometimes are unreachable, or just considering this as reporting exercises. I think and I hope that we can have in this session an understanding on how to see the new duties that directors will have, the creation of the culture and the integration of strategy, making sustainability and resilience of the corporate part of generating a robust governance of sustainability. With that, we are going now to hear Cayo. You all know Cayo. He's the Latin American Corporate Governance Program Manager for the OECD. He will give a presentation about the new Chapter 6. And then we are going to have a few questions to our main key speakers here on the table. And so I'm going to introduce them now, so then we can move to the different questions in a more fluid way. So with us is Francisco Santana. He's a board member of the International Federation of Accountants. He was nominated as a board member in November 2022 by the Institute of Independent Auditors of Brazil, IBRACON. We also have Pedro Melo, the CEO of the Brazilian Institute of Corporate Governance, the IBGC, who you all know very well, and also director of Santander Brazil. And with us also Jose Antonio Giraldo. He's the Issuers Director of the Financial Superintendency of Colombia. So I'll give now the word to Cayo for his presentation, and then we will have the questions.
Thank you very much, Santiago. If I can have my presentation in the screen, please. And my voice is not usually this one like a robot. It's mostly because of the World Cup and some cold weather. And, but we are doing well. We're doing well. So perhaps I can start to say a few words, but when I have my presentation, I'll basically present the research that we have been doing in our division during the last 10 or 12 months or so on the relationship between sustainability and corporate governance. And this has led us, at the start of the revision of the principles, also to propose a new chapter on sustainability and resilience in the corporate sector. And also, in the end, I'm going to present to you the key changes that we are proposing with the incorporation of this new chapter, just with a little bit of more time than Carmen just had. The presentation was there and then vanished, but
Cayo, if I may, I forgot to mention one thing before you put the presentation online. We always have we are used to put this up if we have a question. In this session, we are not having questions from the table. We are having only the questions that I will make to the presentators. But the next question after the coffee break, you will be able to ask the questions in that way. And I will, each of the people that will be in the panel, I will highlight that you have only 5 minutes per question. So if I put this up, is that your time is up? And if not, I will open my mic and try to gently stop you. And so I hope that you can keep your timing.
No, thank you very much, Santiago. This is very helpful. You need to trust now my voice of a robot here. So the plan of our presentation will be first to explain why we have been prioritizing climate-related risks in our research, and also to some extent in the proposal that I have of a new chapter in the principles. And then we'll discuss one of the key regulatory issues related to sustainability disclosure, which is the concept of materiality. Then we will give an overview of existing sustainability ESG standards. And finally, moving from the issue of disclosure, we'll cover some key discussions related to the fiduciary duty of directors Finally, some issues in relation to shareholder rights, to perhaps impose or to provide a target for companies to improve their ESG performance. And finally, propose some of the draft revisions. From a political and point of view, and also in the effective action of regulators, we can see that climate change is clearly a priority. So, for example, we have more than 160 jurisdictions now that have disclosed their plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with the Paris Agreement. And from security regulators and financial regulators, we have also seen, for example, we have a list here in Colombia, Chile, and Brazil, and most Latin American countries. They have already enacted regulation, sometimes specifically focused on climate change. The same case for China, European Union, India, United Kingdom. In some cases just for listed companies, in other cases for larger companies or financial institutions. And now we have also an ongoing public consultation in Singapore, and very often discussed the public consultation by the SEC in the US. And our researchers, just in a little bit more detail now, that we have trying to see what is the market capitalization that faces, in simple words, that faces some specific environmental, social issues. Here we have some selected environmental issues, and you can see adding the first two panels here. Energy management basically means greenhouse gas emissions scope 2, and greenhouse gas emissions here basically means scope 1. So if we add these numbers, globally we have around 2/3 of market capitalization. So companies represent 2/3 of capitalization. They face greenhouse gas emissions, scope 1 and 2, related risks as financially material. And in Latin America, actually, this number is still higher. I think that's 75%, if I remember well, in total. But there is also a very significant regional and country-by-country variation. So, for example, water and wastewater management is especially significant in Latin America. In relation to the concept, probably after a regulator has decided to require or recommend sustainability disclosure, one of the first questions will be, okay, but how do I define materiality for the issues that need to disclose this information? So the traditional concept of materiality is usually called financial materiality. And it means that an issuer must disclose the information if this information is expected to influence an investor's analysis of a company's future cash flow and also the variance of this cash flow. So, and this is the materiality concept that has been adopted by most, if not all, financial standards, and also by many securities regulation, for example, for annual forms. And also very important to note in the context of our discussion today is that most sustainability accounting and reporting standards, they also follow financial the financial materiality concept. So, for example, SASB standards and TCFD's recommendations for climate-related disclosure. But we have an alternative concept, the concept of double materiality, which means that information is material if it is financially material, and in addition, if this information is may also be relevant to the stakeholders' comprehension of a company's impact on society and on the environment. So the concept of double materiality was adopted in the European Union in 2014, and as an exception among other sustainability standards, double materiality has been adopted by the GRI standards, which are especially popular in Latin America, as our research shows. Each one of these concepts perhaps has pros and cons. Here we are just showing the results of two different surveys. They are difficult to compare because they follow different methodologies. The global one to our left has a much smaller sample, and large asset managers are very representative here. And the one to our right, with the original OECD survey here in Latin America, has a much bigger sample, so we have small and medium asset managers here as well. And in our survey, we ask the asset managers just to choose their top priority, and the one to our left, as you may easily guess, it's more than 100%, so they could choose more than one. But I mean, the conclusion, if I may have any conclusion from these two graphs, is that probably I mean, the asset managers in this global survey, they value more sustainability standards that follow the financial materiality concepts, such as TCFD recommendations and SASB standards. GRI standards here are relatively low in the ranking, but in Latin America, I mean, with a small margin, but GRI standards are relatively more popular. But one of the issues that Carmine just mentioned, that investors report almost in our survey or conversation that we may have with them, is that the biggest issue is not whether companies should disclose sustainability information, but also how to make this information of higher quality and also easier to compare between companies and across borders. And there are many sources to this difficulty in comparing information, sustainability information, but one of the main ones probably is the existence of many, perhaps too many sustainability standards. And here in the table, we have 8 different sustainability standards. They have different audiences, so most are focused on investors as the primary users, others have a broader audience, and they follow also different materiality concepts, and they cover different issues. Some are more specialized, others are broader. But there's one good news in this area is that, I mean, as you well know, 1 year ago, IFRS Foundation announced that they are going to create a new board, the ISSB, and this new board will effectively merge the 4 lines here that we have in darker gray. Now moving from sustainability disclosure to the duty of directors, we have 2 theoretical models. One of them is usually called the shareholder primacy view, and it basically means that a director should only take into account the long-term financial interests of shareholders. And there's a very clear advantage in this model because the directors in line with this model would be more accountable because you could, it's not always easy, but you could see the financial results and judge whether the director was successful or not. And we have an alternative model, theoretical as well, is a stakeholder capitalism view, we could say. And it says that directors should equally consider shareholders' interests, financial interests, and the interests of stakeholders such as employees. And there's perhaps some inefficiency in this model, but there's a clear advantage, which is that when policymakers, when governments are not able to correct a market failure, directors would need to step in and try to compensate this problem. A very clear example, of course, is the lack or regulation for greenhouse gas emissions that's not optimal for society. And it's difficult, in reality, as you well know in your countries, jurisdictions do not strictly follow any of those extremes. Reality is more complex, and also courts are more sophisticated than that, perhaps. But here we bring an analysis of the assets under management for investors who care about sustainability. And we see that at the top here, we have investors who integrate ESG information in their investment analysis, but always with the final goal to maximize the financial returns. And here at the bottom, the asset managers with a much smaller value of assets under management who declare that they are willing to accept a trade-off between financial results and ESG results. And finally, the third block that we have in our research and also in the draft revision of the principles is in relation to shareholder rights. We noted 2 trends. One of them is that, especially in the US, but now increasingly in other regions and countries, we have a greater activity of shareholders requiring companies to adopt greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. So for example, last year in the US, 25 proposals in very large companies. And another trend is that some legislators now are providing a new type of cooperation, which does not only need to maximize financial returns, but also allows the directors to pursue environmental and social goals in a more meaningful way. So in Delaware, for example, they are called public benefit corporations, in France, Société Mission, and here in Latin America, in Colombia, in Peru, you have Sociedades de Benefício Interés Coletivo. They basically have a similar structure, but we also saw that their numbers are still quite low. I mean, and even in Delaware, we only have 7 listed PBCs incorporated in Delaware. And in relation now to the new chapter 6, we have the main block, perhaps the new one, is about sustainability disclosure. We quite strongly recommend the adoption of international sustainability standards instead of each regulator developing its own standards. The second recommendation and guidance, more as of a guidance that we bring, is about the concept of materiality. We are relatively close to the concept of financial materiality that I just mentioned, but we provide also some important nuance. For example, highlight that if an issue is very relevant for employees today, it's quite likely that it will become financially relevant for the company. I mean, what some people mention as the dynamic materiality concept. And also looking from an investor with a well-diversified portfolio, sometimes, many times, they should take into account the risk of a company to their whole portfolio. So it gives, I mean, in reality, the decision about what's material or not material, looking from an investor with a large portfolio, the decision is different. And finally, we also recommend in the draft chapter 6, the external assurance, I mean the external auditing of sustainability information, but we also recognize that in many countries, if not in most of them, it might be difficult, for example, to require today a high level of assurance for all sustainability disclosure, for example. So we mentioned that specifically in this case, a phasing process should be considered. In relation to, now I almost finished my presentation, in relation to shareholders and stakeholders, we are more explicitly about the necessity of having a significant dialogue involving senior executives, directors, employees, and other relevant stakeholders. And also in relation to board responsibilities, we note what perhaps was obvious to some people, is that if environmental issue, for example, is financial material for a company, the board of directors should necessarily consider this issue. And also perhaps, I think that's a more significant change that we would have with this draft chapter 6, is a clearer recommendation of the adoption of the business judgment rule or a similar safe harbor that would allow greater comfort for directors to consider more the long term, and when consider the long term, also the sustainability and the resilience of the company. So thank you very much, Santiago.
Thank you, Caio. So we will move now to the questions to our lead discussants. First, I'm going to ask Francisco, who is sitting over there. How has Caio mentioned the International Sustainability Standards Board, and how has the work of the ISSB on setting sustainability-related disclosure standards progressed so far? He can give us a recount on that, and if we can expect that these new sustainability standards will be adopted by the large majority of listed companies globally.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of IFAC, International Federation of Accountants, IBRACON is the Institute of Independent Auditors of Brazil, and CFC and Federal Council of Accountants that I represent. I'm very pleased to be here to share with you our views on the revision of the Corporate Governance Code, particularly, sorry, with regards to the new chapter number 6. It covers the climate and sustainability topics as a manner of best practice in governance. The IFAC and professional accounting organizations and professional accountants, we understand that we are corporate governance, key corporate governance stakeholders in this process. And for this purpose, we understand that a strong governance, corporate governance, is critical to access capital, to market integrity, and also to self-functioning of capital markets. And for this reason, we believe strong that the code must, in fact, address the interests of the shareholders and, of course, the interests of other stakeholders, but it has to be considered separately in an appropriate manner, appropriate balance. Okay? We support this chapter 6 because it has been demanding for the investors around the world, but we understand that it has to be done in a manner of equal quality, consistency, and comparability as the financial information. So, for all these reasons that I spoke, we understand that the ISSB is playing a critical role in this process, and we have to support and consider that's the voice of the profession, the voice of the market regarding the sustainability and other climate topics. Since I reached the ISSB, the International Standard, the national, sorry, the ISSB, I wanna start to talk about the importance for us, the ISSB, and the reason to support in 3 matters. Okay, first, I'm gonna take a look here because I have some data, some information here. In terms of global support, okay, first, we arrived to have statements from G7 this year calling for countries to use the global baseline of ISSB. Second, the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors, they have issued a statement looking, I'm going to read what they wrote, forward to the finalization of standards by the ISSB in support of globally consistent, comparable, and reliable climate-related financial disclosures. Another thing that IOSCO has been closely monitoring the ISSB work. The global composition of the members is a demonstration that it's global, that it has a participation, this participation of people from all parts of the world. And finally, as the voice of the profession, I would like to support them because they are working under the same umbrella of IASB. They are the umbrella of the IFRS Foundation, which has a hard due process and work globally for global. Okay. The second reason to support is that ISSB is the solution. According to IFAC research that was conducted this year, 80% of the companies in the world use multiple standards and frameworks for reporting ESG. Okay? We need rationalization, we need consolidation, we need only one voice to be comparable, to be consistent, okay? And it has been done by ISSB. And the second in this matter is that there is a new memorandum of understanding between ISSB and GRI, Global Reporting Initiative, that can harmonize the informations. And the third and the last reason is that the ISSB is a reality. The new board is fully constituted. The board is working. They are meeting regularly, and they are making decisions. This year, at the beginning of this year, they released 2 exposure drafts regarding sustainability. These exposure drafts received at around 1,400 comment letters, and the ISSB is following the due process of IFRS Foundation. They are working on that comments. They are giving the response, making contacts, consultations, etc. That's the reason that we support and we encourage everybody to follow the ISSB statements. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco. So, Pedro, now that many companies are facing pressure from shareholders and the civil society regarding the transition to more quickly to net zero greenhouse gas emissions, what do you think that could be the best tools to build a constructive relationship on this issue with these actors?
Thanks, Santiago. First of all, I would like to say on behalf of IBGC board, management, and members, we are delighted to be here in this roundtable. And so, going back to your question, I would like just maybe to frame the importance of the pressure, because the pressure is coming from different angles. Like consumers, the new generation, they require sustainable products, and along with that, public policy will follow to address those needs. Shareholder activism. Also, business have to identify and measure its environment impact. And it is not enough to have a nice look. Everybody is watching. Sectors have different impacts. Therefore, there is an asymmetry around the world, important to mention. Some such as financial services or mining or big public companies or listed companies, they are following faster than others and regulated in a different way. And also there are global agreements that not just jurisdictions, but companies, they have to follow. It comes from all angles, the pressure that companies are facing. The answers that we have studied at IBGC, one is very important to measure. There are different ways to measure the impact, but the impact should be measured taking consideration the whole supply chain. Therefore, scopes 1, 2, and 3 is very important as far as measurement. And a key element in governance is how boards they act on those matters. And what we would like to share is climate accountability is very important with a long-term view. Also, board diversity for boards to take a more informed decision. Strategic investment in that direction of environment and climate. Also, management incentives should be tied to the environment decisions. Proper disclosure, this is non-negotiable, is a must. And finally, boards exchanging experiences with peers, because it's It's more than a market fight, but it is a solution that we have to find together and to learn with others' experiences is very important. Thanks, Santiago.
Thank you, Pedro. José Antonio, what is it? So we've been talking about the importance of standardization. Pedro gave us a look at these tools that to achieve these goals. But what is the trade-off when you get these standardizations between adopting national sustainability disclosure frameworks that take into account the singularities of the local context and adhering to a global accepted standard?
Good morning to everybody. I'm more comfortable in Spanish, so I'm going to switch right now.
Yes.
Primero que nada, quiero agradecer a la OCDE por la invitación. Estamos muy orgullosos por parte de la Superintendencia Financiera y de Colombia de participar en esta reunión. Y sobre la pregunta, adoptar un marco de sostenibilidad local permite y da la flexibilidad de hacer un modelo hecho a la medida de cada uno y la verdad es muy tentador realizarlo. Sin embargo, esto generaría un nuevo estándar y un nuevo estándar que solo sería utilizado localmente para los inversionistas locales. Sin embargo, como lo mostró Caio, hay una gran variedad de estándares y esto sumaría uno más dentro de todos los que se encuentran en este momento. Y esto generaría dificultades, aún más dificultades a las que se están presentando en este momento con respecto a la comparabilidad de la información y con respecto a la consistencia en la forma en la que los inversionistas y los stakeholders pueden realizar sus análisis. La otra alternativa es hacer que que las compañías adopten un estándar de información. Y esto puede ser un factor para que nuevas empresas que se vayan a listar, particularmente pequeñas, que estén considerando buscar una financiación en el mercado y obligarlos a esto, genera dificultades y probablemente desincentivos para la generación de nuevos emisores en los mercados de capitales, particularmente en los mercados regionales en Latinoamérica. También puede estar la alternativa de modelos mixtos, donde se establezcan marcos de revelación, adoptando los modelos y los estándares que se están manejando actualmente a nivel internacional. De esa manera podríamos solucionar un poco los problemas que se generan con la comparabilidad, exigiendo diferentes niveles de disclosure a las compañías. La experiencia local que tenemos en la Superintendencia Financiera a través de la expedición de una circular enfocada hacia la revelación de factores de sostenibilidad. Tiene un poco un componente de proporcionalidad. Lo que estamos buscando es que para factores climáticos se adopte la divulgación a través del estándar de TCFD y para los demás temas de sostenibilidad y de ESG se utiliza el modelo de SASB. De tal forma que, aplicando un poco la sostenibilidad, los emisores que tienen mayor interés, mayores niveles de liquidez, mayor tamaño y mayores capacidades para recopilar y divulgar la información al mercado, lo realizan de una forma completa a través de esos estándares. Y compañías que tienen menores niveles de tamaño y menores capacidades operativas o compañías que estén buscando su entrada al mercado de capitales puedan tener unos niveles de divulgación, digamos, que no tengan un informe tan fuerte y unas dificultades de recopilación de información tan fuertes y los costos que vienen asociados, de tal forma que se mitigue un poco el riesgo de desincentivo a ser listadas o a permanecer en el mercado de capitales debido a la carga regulatoria y de divulgación de información que se pueda tener.
Muchas gracias. Francisco, are capital markets well served by the use of traditional concept of financial materiality, or is there a possible compromise between the concepts of financial and double materiality?
Thank you for the question. That's an important question because this discussion about the materiality is generating a lot of debates and confusing the market. Talking first about the IS, the International Sustainability Standard Board, and GRI, together. And what our view of they are going to constructing building right now, it's going to be developed under the concept by the ISSB of we could call, if you were looking for the double materiality, you could call it the materiality considered by ISSB as the full materiality, okay? Which is, if you take it philosophically, is a little bit compatible with the double materiality. But we say full materiality because we are focusing on the investor first and on the shareholders. We are focusing on saying that the materiality of the environment information should be considered as in a whole financial statements published and released annually in an annual basis and together with the financial information being consistent, being comparable, being audited, you know, and that's our view, and be global, okay? This is going to be developed by entity, ISSB, it's global. That's under the IFRS Foundation, that's global. So, if you take the double sustainability, it's a concept, developed by IFRAG, the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group, to be used basically in the Europe, one region of the world, Europe, okay? And we understand that we using by the system the approach of ISB is going to be global, it's going to be consistent, it's going to be linked to the financial information, it's going to be linked the full materiality with the financial information also, and relevant for the investors. But I would say that in any specific jurisdiction, if the regulator of the country decides to, besides of the materiality developed by the SSB, they decide to require additional information about sustainability, it can be possible, it's complementary, it can be understandable, okay?
Thank you very much. Pedro, how are boards in Brazil and Latin America integrating climate considerations when assessing management, and also when they are discussing the corporate strategy?
Well, thanks, Santiago. IBGC had a recent survey on that matter, and in the questions related to boards, how they are informed, prepared, or ready to respond, we have very revealing points. Only 35% have a climate or environment in their agendas. 49% has a lack of disclosure on meeting the climate environment targets. 48% indicated that the information do not flow outside the boards or its sustainability committees in a proper way. 40% indicated that there is no clarity of the board and senior management responsibilities on that matter. And also the risk of who leads truly or who is doing a better compliance on those climate environment requirements. The answer that we try to solve with those questions is that there are regulations imposed to in specific sectors, and one of those it is the financial sector, and with that the risk of asymmetry among companies and how they access capital is a risk. Therefore, a more systemic and integrated approach would be the best answer. Thank you, Santiago.
Thank you, Pedro. José Antonio, do the draft of the revised principles capture well the role and balance that is needed for the dialogue between the board, shareholders, and stakeholders to effectively inform and ensure an adequate consideration of material sustainability risks and opportunities?
Muchas gracias, Santiago. Si bien el foro natural de discusión de los temas de las compañías está en las asambleas de los accionistas, me parece que el documento, este draft, al plantear este escenario de diálogo y los roles que tendrían cada uno de tanto los directores como los accionistas, como los diferentes stakeholders de las compañías, presenta un diálogo muy interesante y muy importante en temas de disclosure. A través de este diálogo se pueden ver a través de diferentes aristas cuál puede ser la información material, cuál puede ser diferentes riesgos que se pueden identificar para la divulgación y la definición de la materialidad de algunos hechos o de algunos riesgos que incluso la misma administración no pueda estar, no esté contemplando en su momento. Digamos, aquí el reto consiste en cómo romper la hegemonía o cómo generar un nuevo espacio para fomentar ese diálogo y cómo se logra que cada una de las partes tenga la misma calidad de información, evitar asimetrías, de tal forma que el flujo de información y la discusión se pueda dar en los mismos términos para todos. Ese reto es bastante importante para fomentar ese diálogo y ese foro y nos pone a pensar a nosotros como reguladores cuál podría ser ese espacio y cómo se podría generar esto para la divulgación de la información de sostenibilidad y los riesgos asociados a ella.
Muchas gracias, José Antonio. So with that, we conclude this second session, and I'll give the word to Caio now to follow up. Thank you.
No. No, thank you very much, Santiago, and our speakers. It was a very fruitful discussion, and I would like to give the floor to Carmine. Close now, please, yeah.
So I think now we have our coffee break. Before that, just I want to say that the presentation will be available because I'm happy that everyone was taking pictures also of the slides, and I think it will be soon after available. Okay, we can send, but we'll be there. And also, let me again thank also because I think the organization, also the SMB staff for all the organization. Also, our Ana is there, Ana Gonzalez. So the organization for this has been. Apart from some, Brazilian delay, which was due to the soccer for your presentation, Caio, but we'll see the rest. And so thank you very much. We're having a break of at 11, where we resume on time, and so it was not typical for letting people to be such on time like today. So we're there. So thank you very much, and have a coffee. Thank you.
conversation still barely holding up. If I had a time machine, I'd use it now to fix all that went wrong and reminisce about all the good times, all the good times. We had plenty, just the past life is all it seems like. What a pity. Somehow